case anyone wants to watch it later. And we, this is setting up, get to people. All right, you made it through a dusting of snow. We will start out with a blessing for Torah study, which is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And I hope everyone's doing okay. We have made our way to chapter 4 of Megillat Esther. Again, further behind than even I wanted to be, but so we'll put our pedal to the metal. The last chapter ended with Haman wanting to getting his permission to slaughter all the Jews, and it ends with the king and Haman sitting down to eat and drink, and to drink specifically. In the city of Shushan, Alter translate was confounded, was confused. The midrash is that Israelites would be approached in the market by their neighbors who would shake them down and say that I'm gonna, when the decree comes, I'm going to kill you and take all your stuff. So everyone's confounded. Chapter 4 then begins. And Mordechai knew all that had been done. We don't know how he knew. The Midrash says Elijah told him, or maybe he had spies on the inside, he seems to he had found, he found out about the plot to kill Achashverosh. So maybe he just gets intelligence. Maybe he's just the kind of guy who knows stuff. He found out all that had been done. And Mordechai rent his garments and donned sackcloth and ashes and went out into the city and cried loudly and bitterly. So this again, these are the traditional signs of mourning, of tearing a garment and putting on uncomfortable clothes and ashes. This is public mourning, goes in the city crying loudly and bitterly. So clearly it's not, this seems to be, everyone doesn't know, Mordechai knows, and his way of drawing everyone else in is by publicly doing carrying on. And he came as far as in the front of the king's gate, for one could not enter the king's gate in the clothing of sackcloth, right? You can't go in. You can't go into, it seems, the palace area, or immediately adjacent to the palace without, if you're improperly dressed. And sackcloth and ashes, he is improperly dressed. And every single province where the king's word and his rule reached, the Jews were in great mourning and fasting and weeping and dirges. Sackcloth and ashes were laid out for the multitude. So midrash here I love is that the was a great mourning. What's avel gadol? What does it mean? Great mourning? Is there a great mourning and not great mourning? The midrash says, well, look, in normal mourning, over the 12 months of mourning, your grief grows less. There's the initial shock, and over time, there's some healing. It's and the rabbis say this was the opposite. They started out in great mourning, and the closer they got to the date of the decree, their mourning increased. So it's great mourning, because it's going up instead of the normal course of mourning, which is down. Or typical course. Or they say that normally, they said, and again, for the sages, they experience loss, I think, yet more frequently than even we do. They say that the normal course of mourning, they would say that, well, if you have, for people who, the rabbis say, for people who lose a child, they're like, well, you still have other children. If they don't have other children, you'd say, well, at least you're going to live. He's like, but here, everyone's going to die. So there's no comfort anywhere to be found. That's why it's great mourning. Right, and they have. If you remember, the decree is made in Nisan, the first month of the year, which begins tonight, for the following Adar. So there's 11 months for them to prepare for this, or 12 months to prepare for it. Pause. We good? Questions? We're at. So fasting with dirges. So after Mordechai, everyone's in sackcloth and ashes, right? And Esther's young women and her eunuchs came and told her the queen was badly shaken. Um, uh, what does it mean badly shaken? The among the midrashim on this is that the rabbi said that she was pregnant by the king and that she miscarried when she heard what was going the decree. Or the pshat is she's just scared. And the just scared is sort of indicated by this next scene, which is, again, one of the details that I love here. This is the back half of verse 4. And she sent garments to clothe Mordechai and to remove his sackcloth from him, but he did not accept him. This is, again, I love this image because it's acculturated Esther. Esther, who is hiding her Jewishness and living an assimilated life, as it were, of privilege and power. And Mordechai, her relative, is carrying on in the gate in ethnic clothes and carrying on in this like publicly loud ethnic way. And she's like, don't embarrass me. Change, like put on some decent clothes, like change. You have put on something proper, okay? Like there's this he's carrying on in the like next to the king's gate in this sort of like horribly ethnic garb, and she like sends a change of clothes to him, and he's like, no, you're not getting off that easy. I love the again, if she's a teenager or late teen and he's an adult, then this like plays out just so. Don't embarrass me. And she sent garments to clothe Mordechai and to remove his sackcloth from him, but he did not accept them. And Esther called to Atach, one of the king's eunuchs who had stationed before, and she charged him concerning Mordechai to find out what this was for and what was this. That's part of the fairy tale style of writing. Let me pull up the Hebrew there because it's such a wonderful turn of phrase I want to get right. Titzavehu al Mordechai ladat maza ve'al maza. Find out from Mordechai ladat maza ve'al maza, which is sort of like, as they translate, like the like what's up and what's up. And Atach went out to Mordechai. Again, notice they're not directly speaking to each other. She won't go out and speak with him publicly, either because she still wants to keep her identity hidden or because she's embarrassed by him. Could go either way. And he's not allowed in. So they notice that they're never actually speaking with each other. They're speaking through an intermediary. And Atach went out to Mordechai in the city square and found that was in front of the king's gate. And Mordechai told him all that had befallen him in the matter of the silver that Haman had meant to weigh out to the king's treasuries for the Jews to wipe them out. Like, again, assuming that she doesn't know what's going on, that this isn't like it's public, but maybe assumes that Esther isn't the kind of person who's watching the news every night. Verse 8, and the copy of the writing of the rule that was given out in Shushan to destroy them, he gave him to show to Esther and to tell her and to charge her to come to the king, to plead with him and to entreat him for her people. Like this is one, again, there's an obsession in the text with writing and rules and like having this go out in every language. And also notice that here, Mordechai isn't expecting or is skeptical that Esther is just going to take his word for it. He wants to put a copy of this in the messenger's hands to take back to Esther. Like, this isn't just, I'm not misinterpreting something. I'm not going crazy. I'm not imagining things. I don't see anti-Semitism under every rock. This is the actual order that is actually given. Like, don't doubt it. Like, that's, so notice that's going on, that Mordechai's like, you're not getting out of this one. And he assumes that she doesn't know it. And Atach came and told Mordechai's words to Esther. Again, note, they never speak directly to each other. There's an intermediary between. Verse 10, and Esther said to Atach and charged him to convey to Mordecai, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that every man and woman who comes into the inner court without having been called, the single rules will be put to death, unless the king reach out to him the golden scepter. And as for me, I have not been called to come to the king for 30 days now. So this again, like, so she's like, everyone knows this. This is the rule. You don't approach the king without being bidden in. And if you approach the king and disturb the king, and he hasn't invited you, there are two options. Either he kills you for bothering him. This is the point of being the king, or he can spare your life by reaching out his golden scepter. Like this, it's sort of like the sign that you're accepted. And as for me, I've not been called to come to the king for 30 days now. So so that's one thing that seems everyone to know. Alter's commentary is bringing Josephus, who tells a history of the Jews, including the story. Josephus vividly imagines court officials armed with axes standing by the king, ready to chop off the head of anyone who presumes to enter the royal presence uninvited, which is a great scene made for Hollywood. Then as for me, I've not been called to come to the king for 30 days now. Alter says her very wording emphasizes the length of this period. It is surely a long time to have a beautiful young wife neglected in the women's quarters. From what we know about Ahasuerus, he is unlikely to have been preoccupied with affairs of state. Could the flagging of interest in Esther be the result of uncertainty about his sexual capabilities? So Alter imagines, and I'm bringing this up partly because I brought it up before, and I don't necessarily agree with him here. He imagines that, I mean, there are two options here. What's not an option, as Alter indicates, is that King Ahasuerus is too busy with work to call on Queen Esther. That's not the case. We know this guy well enough to know that that he's not that it's not that he's too busy with foreign policy. In this book, he's pictured playing wiffle ball, which that might be anachronistic, but either way, it's not that. The options are either he's sleeping with somebody else from the harem, or Alter imagines that it's because he's having sexual problems, and so he's not calling on his wife anymore. We'll see in the next chapter the hint that he's going to pull on for that, even though I think that was not necessarily the case. I mean, sort of like odds are he's busy elsewhere in the harem. But either way, and this is, remember, 5 years in. This is 5 or 7, I can't remember. It's 5 or 7 years into the relationship. They've been married for a little while. So it's not like this is the day after the honeymoon. It's been a few years, and he doesn't call on her anymore. And they told Esther's words to Mordecai. Again, note the lack of direct contact, only through a messenger. So here it's an anonymous they. And Mordecai said in response to Esther, and this, of course, is the sort of like dramatic, one of the dramatic high points of this part of the story. This is verse 13, or 12, 13. Vayomer Mordechai lashiv el Esther al tadmei benafshech lamlit beit hamelech mikol hayudim. Do not imagine to escape, like, of all of the Jews in the house of the king. Like, don't imagine you will escape because you're in the house of the king, that you will escape the fate of all of the Jews. Ki'im hacheres tashri be'et azot ruach hatzlaha ya'amod la'yudim b'makom acher ve'et beit avicha ve'tovedu u'mi yodea im la'et kazot yagia la'malchut. My favorite line. Do not imagine to escape all the Jews in the house of the king. For if you indeed remain silent, relief and rescue will come to the Jews from elsewhere, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether for just such a time like this you have attained royalty. So again, every word of Mordecai's there is awesome. Like, one, don't think that your privilege will shield you. Your privilege will not shield you. You are just as vulnerable as the rest of us, and you have the illusion of protection. But when our number comes up, you're going to be found out as well. I know nobody, you think nobody knows you're Jewish, but somebody's going to turn you in. Not saying it's me, but don't think you'll escape. And notice the next part. For if you indeed remain silent, relief and rescue will come to the Jews from elsewhere. By the way, does he know that? He doesn't. He seems to imagine like this could be a number of different ways. He could think that God will save the Jews, that no matter what, the Jews will be saved by God. Or maybe he has a plan B out there, that if Esther doesn't come through, I know somebody else I can call on to like try and turn this around. Or it could just be a sense of confidence, of like, we'll make it. I don't know how, but we'll make it. And you and your father's house will perish, meaning if you stay silent, you might even be the most vulnerable because you're closest to this guy, and we might get saved and you might go down. It could be the opposite of what you think is going to happen, or what she thinks will happen. And then the last line, my favorite, umiodea, and who knows whether for just such a time like this you became queen. That's the key Purim moment. Famously, the book of Esther has no mention of God's name in it. And again, Moses acts on God's word with great confidence all the time. Isaiah asks, with great confidence. Mordecai, it's only like sort of in this weird topsy-turvy world of Purim. Mordecai, who's supposed to be a prophet, says things like, Mi odea, who knows? Maybe. Am I saying this is definitely the case? No, I don't know. I'm not God. But maybe this is why all this stuff has happened. Is it why all this stuff happened? I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? And I just love, again, like I love that injection of who knows, because of course, who knows is the world that we're in. Who knows what comes next, but that's where he is. So we'll hit the end of the chapter and then we'll pause. Who knows if for just such a time like this, you have attained royalty. And Esther said in response to Mordecai, go, assemble all the Jews who are in Shushan and fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink 3 days, night and day. And I too, with my young women, shall fast in this fashion. And so I shall come to the king, not according to rule. And if I perish, I perish. Kasher avadati. If I die, then I die. If he kills me, then he kills me. Okay. And Mordecai moved on and did all that Esther had charged him. Kasher avadati vayavor Mordecai v'ya'as kechol asher tzivata alav Esther. He did all that tzivah, all that Esther had commanded him. Also great stuff here. One, at the end, notice that by the end, tzivah, same word as mitzvah, right? Like it's a command. The shoes on the other foot. At the beginning of their relationship, Mordecai is the one commanding Esther, hide who you are. And even a few seconds ago, he was telling her what to do. And at the end of this, Mordecai did all that Esther had commanded him. She's now the one who's in charge and giving orders. And he's now the one who says, okay, I will follow your orders. So one, that's a great moment. And of course the chapter ends on that. Um, Esther's response is essentially saying, "Okay, I believe you. Um, I have to risk my life for this. I see your point. Um, this the fast. Um, uh, Alter points out this is slightly odd because they're already fasting, meaning the um, it says that all the people who are fasting in mourning and sackcloth and ashes and fasting, so they're already fasting. The difference may be that the fast is now to be especially on behalf of Esther, who's about to endanger her life for her people, and also a very long fast, 3 whole days and nights. The Midrash, by the way, says that what's significant about this is that that of course the decree um, to kill the Jews came at the beginning of the month of Nisan, and we know that a few days have passed. So the rabbis say that the 3 days of Esther's fast um, are the 13th, 14th, and 15th of Nisan, meaning it includes the first day of Passover. The first night and the first day of Passover are included in her fast. So Avor and Mordechai moved on also could mean Mordechai transgressed. What does he transgress? He says to Esther, like, wait a minute, you're saying that we have to fast on Pesach. We can't fast on Pesach. There's a mitzvah not to. And she says, if you don't fast this Pesach, you ain't gonna have any more Pesachs. So he says, okay, and they break the mitzvah for this year in order to have it for future years. All the people fast on Seder night in solidarity with Esther, and obviously she has a faithfulness about it. She doesn't know if she'll survive. So if I die, I die. This is just a risk I have to take. Pause.
There's some irony in here too. Vashti was executed for not coming when bid, and nice. Esther runs the chance of being executed for coming when not bid to come. Right.
Yes, exactly. It's the good catch. It's the opposite. It's the opposite move of what caught Vashti. She refuses to come when asked, and Esther is coming unasked. Each one could get you killed, is the implication.
Rabbi, the fact that she was told by the eunuchs and by her women, I guess they meant her maidens, that what was going on and she was shaken up. Doesn't this sort of hint that they knew who she was?
Well, or it was just like, it could just be like the scuttlebutt around, like sort of like, did you hear? Did you hear the new decree? The new decree is that that all the Jews are going to be killed, and maybe they don't know that it's her. It's just sort of like talking about like what's going on.
It would seem like politics would be the last thing they would be discussing in a harem.
Correct. That does it. Well, that's certainly Mordechai's assumption that she doesn't know. So certainly when Mordechai sends, who knows if the messenger is like sworn to secrecy or not, but he tells the messenger what's up and sends like the copy of the decree with him. I don't know if she can read it on her own or not. Obviously, that's the implication is that she writes letters and things like that. But that could be in a matter of speaking. It could be that her reaction to this might out her to her crowd. They might like her enough by this point anyway, not to care about it. Again, this is a few years in. Though I'll point out that, again, the rabbis are obsessed with, well, she was a vegetarian because she lived in the palace, 5 years without anyone knowing she was Jewish. How could she have done that? She must have been a vegetarian. But again, holidays, like it's sort of impossible to imagine that she stays well hidden unless she's totally assimilated. It's hard to square, which again, that's part of the farce of this story.
Also, the fact that it's probably a forest, could that be the reason that God is not mentioned at all?
Yes, that's sort of like not a proper space for God
Exactly.
because it's so body and sexy
And just because it's not true.
and silly. Yes, right. Yeah. Just that that is not true in a different sort of way than we would apply to, like did 2 million Israelites walk out at the Exodus, like whether or not that's true, sort of like that's a different sort of true and not true. This is a different category of story.
Rabbi,
Mhm.
I'm a little bit confused where you said that the fast would include Pesach. Is it because it was a month? You're going from the first one from that month, from the start of that month, not from Esther's 3 days.
Right. So the decree comes. Let me let's check back on chapter 3. The decree is in the first month, which is the month of Nisan, the 12th year of King Ahasuerus' reign, he cast a pour, which is a lot, and every day of the month, for every month of the 12, and fell on. So it's in the 5th year, because the 12th year of King Ahasuerus' reign. So she's queen for 5 years. It's the it's in Nisan, and we're not told when in Nisan. So the rabbis allow are allowing a few days. Mordechai obviously is out and about, and then the word gets out even past that, and there's the time allowing for this sort of like back and forth of the conversation, and for him to refuse to put on clothes that won't embarrass Esther. So they're assuming like a few days here, and that's the midrash on is that there's a few days from when he does it, from when the decree comes to when the fast is declared, and that it includes Pesach, and it's sort of like it's partly, I think, to add to the drama of the moment that they're fasting on Seder night, and that's how threatened they feel.
Now,
Thank you.
I'm confused also. Nisan is the first month, according
Correct.
to this story, and Adar would be the last month. So they have about a year to go. Why would she fast? I guess she's got plenty of time to tell the king. Why fast then?
She seems to be in a, if I'm going to do this, I got to do it now. Like this is, she's going to risk her life, and it's a tear off the Band-Aid. It's now or never. Okay, I'm going to do it, and let's get to it. We're going to start as soon as we can, and the preparation is everyone's going to get like, I'm going to feel like everyone's support here, and this is sort of, it's like saying a Mishabach for somebody is, or being encouraged because somebody went on the cancer walk in your honor, right? Like does their walking actually like make a difference in my diagnosis? The answer is no, but I know that they're supporting me, and that does make a difference in sort of like in my feeling and things like that. Like so like this, like it's like she knowing that everyone's fasting is going to make a difference to her, and it's going to be now. That's the midrash. The essential part of it is explicit, which is that she is bravely risking her life. That again, like that, Mordechai is like, I can't make any promises, but I don't think you'll survive this either. And who knows? Like, this could be your time. This could be your time. And she's like, all right, if I die, I die. And it's and it really is. It's it's a great moment. Karen usually reads this chapter when when Purim time rolls around, and she holds on to the Kasher avadati, and if I die, I die. because it's she like drags that out because it's the sort of like key moment. Ode, others? Chapter 5. This is we're gonna make up for lost time here. V'hiba yom hashlishi v'tilbash Esther malchut. And it was on the third day that Esther dressed up in royal gear, donned royal garb, and stood in the inner court of the king's house, opposite the king's house. When the king sitting on his royal throne in the royal house, opposite the entrance to the house, all this sort of like weird detail, right? Part of it, the royal garb obviously is opposite Mordecai's out there in sackcloth and ashes, and she's like as dolled up as she could possibly be as the queenly robes. That's the contrast offered, right? Like and presumably again like the royal robes to indicate I'm not just a random person coming to you in case I catch you in an off mood. Remember, I'm the queen. See the king sitting on his royal throne in the royal house opposite the entrance to the house. And it happened when the king saw Esther standing in the court that she found favor in his eyes, and he reached out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. And Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What troubles you, Queen Esther, and what is your request? Up to half the kingdom, and it will be granted to you." So we'll pause.
So I have a question. Yes. This has always bothered me.
Yes.
He says to her, "You can have whatever you want." So
yeah.
Why doesn't she just come out with it? Why does she make all these parties and do all these other things?
So that's sort of the so that's a question. Why isn't she, like, if he says ad chetya malchut, there are a couple of possibilities that we'll see that we'll maybe like talk about as we go on. But I would say that at the that it suggests she thinks that just asking that he's saying ad chetya malchut, half the kingdom I'll give to you, I love you so much. That he's saying it, but he doesn't really mean it. She needs to manipulate him into a certain frame of mind in order to get him to in fact agree to what she wants. Remember, she hasn't seen him in a month, and that is reasonable that like he might be saying it, but like maybe he's not wholehearted in saying it because he hasn't called her for a month. So she wants to butter him up a little bit more, and she'll, drag this whole thing out, seemingly to butter him up a little bit more in order to get him to agree, in order to put Haman in a compromising position. Get a couple of drinks into him, bat her eyelashes a couple of times. I think that's the implication.
Rabbi,
mm-hmm.
I always thought, speaking as a person who is not at all a chess player, I couldn't think 3 moves ahead if my life depended on it. But I always thought that was part of Esther's brilliance and part of her. That's why she deserves our kudos, because she created such a closed door plan of the trap.
Yes.
I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, I could never have done that. So for me, looking at this, I think it's brilliant.
I think I think that probably is part of like what the story is meant to do, meaning that she's the unlikely heroine, as it were. Like again, like she's in the harem, like not reading the newspaper. She, a genocidal decree has been issued, and Mordecai assumes that she's ignorant of it.
Rabbi,
yes. So yeah, I think the fact that she gets what she wants is the implication is that she's outsmarting not just the king, because outsmarting the king might not be the hardest thing in Shushan to be able to do, but outsmarting Haman is the trick, and that might be part of her game, that she's portrayed as being smarter than him even. Yeah.
That clearly the king isn't the sharpest knife in the drawer here, right? I mean,
Right.
Other than having women and waving his scepter, he doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot of deep stuff here, right?
Correct.
All
Right. So he's not the challenge. It's everyone else.
Rabbi, Esther hasn't eaten for 3 days.
Right.
Can you imagine what you would feel like if you hadn't eaten in 3 days and nobody makes mention of this? The king doesn't notice it?
Right, exactly. Right. Is she not flustered? Is she not seeming weak? Is she not emaciated? Like what's the right, it's not clear. And then also like sort of like, oh, like well, the request coming up, like come to my banquet. It's a right, it is, that's a thing, is she should be a wreck. And you would expect the request to be, I'm suffering, save me. And this is how you can save me. But it isn't. Yes. So absolutely. I mean, good point, meaning that it's a tough spot in the story, to try and make sense of that scene. Again, maybe part of the fairy tale aspect of it. The king says to her, this is verse 3 again, Malach Esther, Malka, Uma bikashetech, Uma what is your request until up until half the kingdom, and it will be given to you. I just remember this is just now it's 15 plus years ago, like living in Israel, like one evening just like walking into the vegetable market, another guy was walking in at the same time and I was just a corner mercolet, just like a bodega, and the shopkeeper says to the guy who's walking in next to me, he says to him, which is just a what do you want? Until half the kingdom, I'll give it to you. And just sort of like, it was just one of those joyful moments of living in Israel, where casual conversation is, what can I do for you? I'm happy to do anything I want. But the phrase for that is, until half the kingdom and I will give it to you. I'm just quoting the book straightforward.
He also says, what troubles you?
Yep. So maybe she does look off. Malach. It's troubles you is not necessary to the text, I would say. Like it's like, it could just be like, what's up, or what's going on, or what brings you in today. Like it could have like this sense of what's troubling you, or it could be, he knows that people don't just drop in on him. So if somebody's dropping in on him, the implication is that it must be something super important, because why else would you take this risk? If he's conscious of that sort of thing. And then the important scene here, she goes, Queen Esther goes to the king. She stands in the courtyard before him. She found favor in his eyes. She found favor in his eyes. And the king extended to Esther his golden scepter, asher be'ado, that was in his hand, the krav Esther, and Esther came close, and she touched the tip of the scepter. This is why Robert Alter thinks that he was having problems before, and Esther uniquely helps him with his problems in the bedroom, is because the text says that when Esther came before him, he extended his golden scepter to her, and she found favor. She found favor in his eyes. One. Then he extended his golden scepter to her. Two. And she touched the tip of the head, the rosh of the scepter. and then he says, I will give you anything you ask. That is why Alter thinks that she is different. Why is she different from all the other inexperienced virgins? Is that she was sort of like understanding with his issues that only he could, that only she could do this. I don't think Alter is right on that. I do think that the overall there's a sexual thing going on there is intended in the text. So I don't think he necessarily like has trouble in the bedroom. I think maybe the opposite is the case. But I do think that in the original, that him extending the golden scepter and her touching the head of it and him then being like whatever you want, I do think that is a sexual thing. And like in the spirit of like all the bodiness of this story, I think that's one of the things where like the original audience could have been shouting, you know, like woo woo, like sort of like that. That's I think that is a double entendre in the text. Not everyone thinks that, though. I'm not out on a limb on it. It's like it's a debate. Some people say yes, some people say no. I think I think the golden scepter is wink wink. He extended his golden scepter to her. So you can take that, and Alter just sort of knows that too. Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. The literal sense is head of the scepter. A sexual understanding here is not to be excluded. So at the very least, that the sexual understanding here is not to be excluded. So that is one of the, again, bawdiest and more raucous moments of the Tanakh is, I think, the golden scepter scene. That's my take. The king said to her, "What troubles you, Queen Esther, and what is your request? Up to half the kingdom, it will be granted to you." So, and Esther said, "If it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him." So again, she has it all prepared. By the way, this is part of Linda's reference that there's that she's playing chess, that she's a couple of moves ahead. And again, the two things we see the king doing a lot of are feasting. This sort of like eating and drinking. He does a lot of eating and drinking, and he does he has a thing for being with beautiful women, right? So these are the two things he does. And so Esther, to make sure that her plan works, is maybe playing on these two things. So her big request, this must be something serious, is come into a feast with me. Come on. And he's like, well, all right. So this, and she, of course, invites him and Haman, and the king seems to think nothing of it. It's Alter notes, time, of course, an urgent consideration because the day of the scheduled massacre is approaching. Lavish banquets are the very language of this Persian court. The story began with banquets, and now in the pivotal moment will take place through one banquet leading to a second one. And of course, after the decree, the king had a different drinking party with Haman. Like so again, like there's everything hops from feast to feast to feast. And the king said, "Hurry to Haman to do Esther's bidding." Like, all right, let's party. And the king and Haman came to Esther to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said to Esther at the wine banquet, "What is your petition? And it will be granted to you. And what is your request? Up to half the kingdom, and it will be done." Again, this sort of like lavish way of speaking and repeating the repetition. The Hebrew here is really nice. What is it? Verse 6. Ve'omer melech Esther Amakav Hamishter Yain, at the wine feast. What is your request? And it will be given to you. And what is your and what are you asking? Until half the kingdom is given, it'll be given to you. And she says to him, she says, my petition and my request, if I have found favor in the eyes of the king. And then this is sort of like the, like, if you truly love me, like this is again that she's sort of like the impression. And I think again, this is sort of like the woo-woo aspect of it, where the crowd gets going, like sort of like this is her batting her eyelashes, like, if I have found favor in your eyes, if you really love me, I petition my request if I have found favor in the eyes of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition, fulfill my request, like really building up to it, like this is my big request. If you're willing to do it, please, will you find it in your heart, as it were? Let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and tomorrow I shall do according to the king's bidding. Like, all I'm asking to you, come and eat and drink with me tomorrow. And Haman went out that day happy and of good cheer. And when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, and he had not arisen and not stirred him, Haman brimmed with wrath against Mordecai. And Haman held himself. So again, so her request is just come and eat and drink again. And Haman leaves, and he's on cloud nine. Esther thinks that I'm so great. I'm like in the inner circle now. Like I'm like a member of that family. Like we eat, drink together, and we have a good time together. And he's just on cloud nine. And he walks out, and when he sees Mordecai not following orders, he just like flips on a dime, and he just like, and he couldn't be more furious. And that the high of his feeling like he's part of the royal family is like hit to a low when he's filled with fury at Mordecai, sackcloth and ashes, sitting right outside the palace, of course, is just an affront. And Haman held himself in check and came to his house, and sent and brought forth his friends, and Zeresh, his wife. So he doesn't, as Alter notes, he doesn't rant and rage in public, but waits until he returns home when he can sort of like rant at home. So, and Haman recounted to them, his household, the glory of his wealth and of his many sons, and all of which the king had elevated him. He says, like, oh, I've got everything going for me, and how he had raised him up over the noblemen, the servants of the king. Like everything's going perfectly. And Haman said, Queen Esther brought with the king to the banquet that she prepared only me, and tomorrow too am I invited with her by the king. But all this is not worth my while so long as I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting in the king's gate. Like, I'm on top of the world. I've got everything I ever wanted. But everything I ever wanted is worth nothing with this guy out there mocking me, this Jew out there mocking me. This is what Haman unloads to his family. And this is his wife responds, and Zeresh, his wife, together with all his friends, said to him, let them set up a stake 50 cubits high, and in the morning say to the king that Mordecai be impaled on it, and come with the king to the banquet happy. And the thing pleased Haman, and he set up the stake. So Alter again's like, so it says it's not clear whether or not Haman, by venting to Zeresh, to his wife, and to the rest of his family, like, and the rest of his family and friends, like, if he wanted them to come up with something that was especially cruel, or if he was just like, if we wanted them to talk him down. Either way, they don't talk him down. They're like, if that's what upsetting you, and you've got all this power, then just have him killed. And that way, by the time the party rolls around, you'll be able to really enjoy yourself because Mordecai will be dead, right? Is this hanging or is this impaling? I mentioned this before, not quite clear. Sort of either way. And there's a sense of like, oh well, like just do this and everything be okay. Like if there's something troubling you, just deal with it. And Haman's like, you know what? You're right. If something's not sparking joy in me, then I should just get rid of it. And if it's Mordecai that doesn't spark joy within me, then we should just get rid of him. And then I'll have a greater sense of happiness. Pause. Thoughts? This is great. This is again like the turnings of the screw. And complexifying the plot a bit, right? Like this is where it's important that nobody knows, or certainly nobody outside of Esther's house knows, that Mordecai is related to her. Maybe this is why Mordecai wanted that to begin with, so that she would be protected should he be in a compromised position. But yeah, so this is the key moment. So
Rabbi,
yes.
so in this kingdom, justice is what the king says it should be. He
Correct.
decides. And here's Mordecai demonstrating to his wife and his family, I have risen so high.
Come on. Ooh. Adlo
Or
Yada.
Haman
Right.
has risen so high that now what I say justice is
Right.
shall be carried out as justice.
And this is certainly for like why is this in the Tanakh and things like that. Part of it is for farce. Like if one takes it seriously, it's like that and that it's a parody of rule. If God is supposed to be just, then Haman is capricious. And if the world's supposed to where it's supposed to work in a way where we get our rewards, like the world where you're ruled by madmen and vengeful people, is one where no one is safe, and where doing the right thing can get you killed. And like this is sort of like this is like the turning on. Like we know the rest of the Tanakh speaks of a world of justice. Well, here's this topsy-turvy other version of the world where madmen are in charge, and that if you anger the guy in charge, he's just going to talk to this like little inner circle and decree terrible things against you.
You know, Rabbi, if I could put up my watch now, I just lay my watch right up there, Rabbi.
We'll leave it be. This is what this is part of what the text is concerned with. The drunken king, uninterested in ruling, and guy who is interested in ruling isn't interested in justice, and he sort of again with these wild mood swings. So yeah, you can take of it what you will, but we're not making it up. That's what's there in the text. Others, there's again, like women aren't dumb, like to the like general sense of the talk. Men are the primary players, but in no way are women sort of portrayed as less than. Again, here, Haman's obviously morally deficient, but the king is someone as well. The king is clueless and easily manipulated. Zeresh isn't like less sharp than Haman. And certainly Esther is, she's more sharp than her husband, and equally sharp, one would think, than Mordecai, right? So again, like that's the impression that throughout the Tanakh, as we've mentioned other senses, women are usually in a subordinate social position, or always in a subordinate social position, but not intellectually or morally less than. That is not how women are portrayed. All right. Adkan. All right, finally, we're making up for some lost time. So this is good stuff. So let's see. Today's the 11th. We got the 18th, and then the 25th is Erev Purim. So I don't know if we're getting to the end or not by Purim time, but we might. We made 2 chapters today. The next chapter will begin with the king having not being able to sleep at night, and he likes to be read a story when he'll be read to when he can't sleep at night. the book he's read presumably isn't Queen Vashti's comfy pants, but he likes to be read too. All right. We'll do it again next week. Bezrat Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Take care of yourselves.
Have
Be
a
well.
great day, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Have a